too. I saw those online videos and I was like, "Ooh, he's got something going." So.
Well, sorry it took a while to get back to you.
Howdy.
Where are you at, Aaron?
Jackson, Michigan.
Michigan, huh? Cool. We're gonna wait just a few minutes to let people join, and then we'll get started. How has Memorial Designer been going for you, Aaron?
Quite well. When we first got it, I did a couple of days with Rich Hagen.
Okay.
So he gave me a pretty good rundown of how things went, and I've been able to pick up a lot of it from there.
Nice. Good. Good to hear. I'm gonna see if I can find myself a cough drop somewhere. So, you said you've watched the previous videos?
I've watched a few of them, and then I've watched a lot of your regular YouTube videos over time too. So.
Okay. So for these lessons, we're trying to go through basically to start with what every tool does, just a brief overview. And then after that, we'll dig into things more in depth. Last time we started talking about the tools on the Memorial Designer toolbar. We didn't quite get through all of those, so we're going to continue on with that this week. But if ever you have any questions, if there's anything you want to cover, if there are any things that you're stuck on doing and want to do, feel free to ask and we can cover that stuff too. So.
All right, cool.
And if you ever need us to have, a file to look at or something, if you just send that to my email ahead of time, then we can open it up and take a look at it then.
Cool.
Okay. Well, I think we might as well go ahead and get started. And then anybody else that wants to join can pop on in. So I'm going to get my stuff over here. Charlie, do you remember how far we got last time? I think we got to maybe.
You did the
Blastable?
What's that?
Maybe Blastable? Is that how far we got?
We did talked about some alignment. Yeah, I think you're at it wouldn't be bad to go over line width just in case,
Sure.
But I think Blastable was where you were at.
All right.
Yeah, because you did the join lines.
Blastable. Yeah, I think we did Blastable. Now we'll recover those anyway. I'll just do those really quick.
Just do a quick review.
Quick review. Fine screen.
Hi, Tom. How you doing? Charlie here. What we did last time, if anybody has their mic muted, instead of having to switch back and forth from muting and unmuting, you can always just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you didn't understand something. And if you need help, go like this. I'm just kidding on that. But all right.
All right. I have shared my screen. Everybody able to see that?
Yes.
So just a quick review. Line width. That's if I draw just with any one of the drawing tools and I want to set my line width to a certain amount. I like to have 0.09 as my line width. So if you hold control and click on that, it'll bring up the line width tool. Settings, so I have 0.09, and that just applies an outline to it. So if we look at the wireframe, it's still just a single line, but it's an outline applied to that. But that gives you the option to draw a bunch of stuff like this, apply a line width. And the nice thing about it is it keeps it scalable. So if I make it smaller, it stays at 0.09. If I make it bigger, it stays at 0.09. So that's one of the nice things about drawing with an outline, is that you can scale in that manner. Then when it comes time to actually create the design with your stencil cutter, you just go up to Object and convert outline to object, and that then turns it into the double line instead of the single line. So there we go on that one. I'm going to turn my on-screen display back on too, because I think I had that turned off. So give me just a second.
Yeah, I like that setting those lines up first, and then you can edit them. And once you trim them, and you get nice corners too, like the end of that, you know, I guess it's kind of like a leaf, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good, huh?
It looks like a leaf, not bad.
Pretty
But
good.
yeah, so it's cool. I like that. Yeah, that point that you have on there, so it's nice and clean. Look at that.
So that's
Now,
what
can you apply when you're using sorry, I was trying to click on it and I was on my Corel, not yours. In Memorial Designer, when you make that blastable, that's still going to be a line. But can you apply multiple? Can you grab multiple things and apply it, or is it one at a time?
as far as the line width tool?
Yes.
Yeah, so if I have these just as regular thin outlines,
Mhm.
and grab them and go boop.
Yeah, I like that. That's really efficient that you can grab it all.
All right.
Good morning, Tyler.
Looks like Tammy's back in the house. Hi, Tammy.
Hey,
Good
Hello,
to see ya.
Tammy.
We were just trying to decide what we had left off on last time, and we thought it was somewhere around blastable. I think we did blastable, but we're just going to quickly cover those again just in case. So this one was line width, and then blastable is, so let's say you've got this design. Right now you can see, because we've got a single line with an outline applied to it, it is scalable. I can make it smaller, and that line width is going to stay the same no matter how big I am. But let's say we had converted it to curves. So I'm just gonna grab this and hit Control Shift Q, which is my convert to curves. And so now if we scale that down, it makes it smaller, right? So that's where blastable comes into play, is that you can shrink down designs like this, choose a reference point. So I just drew a line there that says it's 0.032 inches. I'll shift select what I want to change and hit blastable, and it will go and make that piece blastable. It didn't change this one because that is actually not combined with the rest. Had I combined it all first, then grabbed it and ran blastable, then it would do everything all at the same time. So that's what blastable does, is helps you resize things back to your 0.09 or whatever V width you want to have. And okay, so that brings us to bold object. Bold object is very similar to blastable, but it works by making your object bolder by a certain amount. So if I click Control and click on this, it's going to pull up my contour distance, which I have currently set to 0.005, which isn't very much bolder, but every time I hit this button, it's going to make it 0.005 inches bolder every time I click it. Okay. If I hold Shift and click on it, it's going to go the opposite direction and make it 0.005 inches thinner every time I click on it. So you can make things bolder or thinner rather quickly by doing that. One caveat with this, one reason I use it a lot is with text. So let's just say we have some text here, but we use a font that's maybe not set up for sandblasting really well. So Monotype Corsiva, for instance, it's got these thin serifs on it and some thin lines. So if we were to have this text, we could always make this text a little bit bolder just by clicking the bold object button. The thing to realize though when you do that is it's no longer editable as text. So I can't come in with my text tool anymore, click on it and change it. I can use my shape tool and grab pieces and move them across, or whatever that way, but it's not editable as text any longer because it's been converted to curves. So that's one thing to realize if you're using bold objects, is it will convert text to curves. You can always make a copy, so I just hit the plus sign on the numeric keypad to make a copy, and then I bold object, and that will leave me with my original here. that's editable if I ever needed to go back to it. But
I'd like
that's-
to add that if you're going to bolden text, which I do that frequently when I'm working on lettering that's going to be small, I make sure that I increase the kerning considerably. So when I do bolden the text, I don't get things happening. Like if you look at the L and D
coming together. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'd definitely do the same thing. Just pull this out so that there's more space.
Yeah, you can use the editing tool, folks, or you can press F10 on the keyboard, and that is your shortcut key to edit.
So from there, then we can bold.
I use the edit key all the time, the note editing.
All right.
Yeah, there you go.
Any questions on bold objects, guys?
Nope.
Awesome. All right. Okay. The next one over is frosted outline. What that's meant to do is quickly give your text or other objects an outline and then change the inside of it to frost and then just give you a black outline. So when I click on this, it outlines it and then gives me an inside frosted area. If we were to do that by hand, what you would end up doing is taking your object, coming over here to contour, contouring to whatever that amount is, breaking the contour apart, then selecting this and changing it to frost, and then selecting this and changing it to black. So those are the manual steps that frosted outline is doing. If you ever wanted to do it more interactively, you'd use the contour tool, but to do it quick and easy and fast, that's what the frosted outline tool is. There is a secondary thing that happens if you hold shift and click on frosted outline, and that is that it will create a shadow. However, if we look at the wireframe of this, you'll notice some crazy stuff going on, and that's because it's using, on the back end, it's using the Extrude tool, which is here. And we used that because that's what was available when we created the button. But in order to get this then to cut, you have to go in and do some welding and other stuff. So I no longer use that. That has been replaced with the block shadow tool. So you can just use block shadow now because it's actually more interactive anyway. You got the ability to make your shadow as big or little as you want. So I don't actually use the shift click on frosted outline anymore, but I would like to in the future have the frosted outline do the same thing, but using the block shadow tool for a set default. That way you can do it every time quickly. We just haven't quite gotten that far yet, but that's frosted outline. If you have text, so this is text, you can use frosted outline, and you can see now that the text is black, but if I use frosted outline on it, the text then gets turned to 10%, and then the outline is here. Like Charlie was saying before, you know, if you're going to outline something, it's usually a good idea to give it a little bit more space because it breaks the contour apart from the original. If I needed more space and I came in to the text and edited my space, you'll notice that the outline does not go with it. So normally you're going to want to do that before you hit the frosted outline button. Otherwise, you have to delete it and start over. If, on the other hand, you use the contour tool, just to show you the difference, contouring it would actually keep it editable. So if I went like this, the contour goes with it because it's an effect applied to the existing text. But to make it quick and fast, the frosted outline button will break that contour apart. So there's a difference there between frosted outline and just using the contour tool. You don't have to use it on text. If you wanted to make a quick panel, I mean, you could do that. You could just draw a rectangle and it'll build a quick panel, but it's meant mostly for text. All right, any questions on that? No? All right, so the next one over is Bevel. This one I threw in here just because a lot of times if you've got, let's say we've got a 24 by 12 here, oops, 24 by 12, and it's going to be like this, and I say, give it a name. Sometimes it's fun to show depth of carving, and so that's why I created this, is so that you can select what you want and hit the bevel tool, and it's just going to apply a bevel effect to that text so that it appears to have some depth to it. And it works nicely with text like this because it's just a single object with that effect applied. If, on the other hand, we had brought in a piece of artwork, so let's just open by number 3200, import. So we'll bring in this bird that we always bring in just for kicks. And I'll make this polished so that you can see what's happening here. If I were to take the bird and apply the bevel effect to it, what it has to do in order to create that bevel inside this correctly is it actually has to duplicate the frosted part. So we've got the frosted part here, and then it actually duplicated it and combined it with the outline so that it would work correctly. If we didn't do that, then what happens is, and I'll grab this and I'll just break it apart here. Another thing to realize too is that the bevel is an effect, which is a bitmap effect, and it's a pretty intense one. So it will use system resources, especially that, it's creating it at 300 DPI because that's what I have my bitmap rendering set to by default. You can change that to something lower and it'll go faster for on-screen stuff. But if you apply bevels to something that's really complicated, then it can really eat at your resources. Anyway, if I break this apart, okay, and I'm just going to combine all these inside pieces to be frosted, and then I've got my outline right here. If I applied the bevel effect to just that outline, you'll be able to see here that it doesn't look right. And the reason it doesn't look right is because it's applying the effect to just that outline part. So it's going really deep toward the center of those pieces, but it's not really doing just the V line. And so that's why it has to take this secondary piece, combine it with that outline in order to make it work. So that's something to realize. If you use the bevel tool, you're going to end up with double cuts if you use the bevel tool and don't delete that secondary piece that it created for you. So that's your warning for the day, is if you're beveling, make sure you realize what you're doing. Otherwise, when it comes to cutting, you're going to get double cuts. So if it were me and I was using the bevel tool and it created the second piece for me, I would delete that first before I grabbed my pieces and sent them to the plot page. That way you're not going to get doubles there. Make sense?
So you were saying it's using a lot of system resources to apply that?
Yep.
So at the end when you're all done, do you see a fairly large increase of file size too?
File size, I don't believe changes too bad. I mean, let me go ahead and save this and see, but I don't think it really does too much, because unless you break it apart. If you break the effect apart and then it just has the bitmaps as the full size, then I think it would make it bigger. But let's just do a file size test here. All right. But you can see too that it's taking longer to save that than it normally would. So we'll go back and open and desktop. So it's still 68K, which is likely what it was going to be anyway. So I don't think it really affects file size too much unless you break those apart. That's anyway, that's my assumption. So if I come in here and, because what happens when you break them apart, and then it's got your text that's still editable as text. It's got your design that's still your editable vector. But then underneath it or above it, then you've got that bitmap that it's created. So I'm assuming that if I go to save, it's now going to be a larger file size. Save that. It's a little bit larger, 609K versus 68. So not horrible, but a little bit bigger. That's simply because of the bitmaps, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one is add background. Now my add background is going to work a little bit different than your add background because the version I'm running is the latest one that I'm testing. So it'll work different. In your version, when you click add background, there are two options. There's either a dark blue or a light blue background. And when you click on it, it will import and basically just bring it to the size that it is in the file. If you hold Control and click on it, then it's going to do the lighter version. And if you ever wanted to change these, if you just go to Open and navigate to your documents, sorry, not that documents, this one. And then under Documents, you got a Memorial Designer folder. Under Memorial Designer, there is an import folder. And then under import, there'd be a BK1 and a BK2. Again, mine are going to be a little bit different just because the version that I'm running here. But if you open up the BK1 or BK2, edit it however you want, and then just save over the top of the original, then you can make your own background files. And it's really just meant to be a quick way to import a background. You can always import a photo or whatever you want to put behind your stuff. But as far as disclaimers and that sort of thing, that's really what the button is for. While I'm at it, just to tease, I guess, what's coming is if I now click on the add background button, what it does is it will bring in one of 4 different backgrounds. So just by clicking, it will bring in one. And instead of bringing it in at the size that it is in the file, it actually looks for in the file itself an area that's called the safe zone. And so if I hit the wireframe, you'll see that I've got an extra box right here, and it's looking for that safe zone. And then it fits that safe zone to my selection or to everything on the page. And so that way it can fit my background around my object. If I had created something that was really tall, let's say we're going 36 by 24, on a 36-inch base. Okay, and I'll just throw this over to the side. If I select it first and then hit add background, what it does is it brings in a vertical version of my background file and applies it that way so that it looks better vertically instead of horizontally and fits the size better. So in the new code that we're working on, it will actually open up one of 8 different backgrounds, depending on if they're horizontal or vertical. And whether or not you're clicking Control Shift nothing or Control and Shift at the same time. So let's go to Memorial Designer. There we go. And then back into import. So you can see here now I've got a whole bunch of different things that it chooses from. So if I had instead clicked Control, held Control and clicked, it would bring in a different version. If I held Shift, it would bring in an even different version, and then Control and Shift will bring in another version. So that's something to look forward to in a future update here pretty quick. But currently it's just going to bring in one of two backgrounds for you. Any questions on that? Nope.
No, I like that. That's awesome. Fantastic.
All right, so add vase works very similar. When you click on the button, it's going to bring in a vase. When you're not using software that's being tested. Give me just a second here. I'm gonna click on this again and see what happens. Huh. Oh, that's why. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so the way the code currently works is when you click on the button, add vase, it simply goes and finds your vase file and brings it in and imports it for you. So then you can go and put it where you want. Pretty easy. I mean, that's all it does. That's all your button does, is just brings in a vase file. Again, to tease what's coming, if I hold Control and click, it's going to bring in another vase. If I hold Shift and click, it's going to bring another vase. And if I hold Control and Shift and click, it'll bring in another vase. The reason that I'm doing this is because this will give us the ability to do tapered vases, maybe bronze vases, maybe metal vases, whatever. You can have, 4 different choices depending on whether you're holding Control Shift or Control and Shift at the same time. And then also for Memorial Designer in the UK, they often do vases that are inset into the granite base. And they've got flowers that work that way too. And so I'm just trying to make it so that there's more options there for being able to do that sort of stuff. So that's not fully implemented yet, but that's what's going to be coming. Again, with yours on the add flowers, if you click on it, it's just going to bring in the flowers. And currently what it does is it brings in flowers, excuse me, but it brings them in behind everything else. The reason for that is so that, if you put it where your vase is, it's not going to be on top of your vase. Pretty simple, but if you didn't know that that's what it did and you click that button and it's behind, your existing design, you may not know that it's there. You can always hit V to go to the wireframe to see it and grab it, or just grab it from the center so that you can grab it where you want it. But that's the reason that it's going to the back, is so that you can throw it on your vase without having an issue like this where it's in front. And yes, you could always change the vase or change the flowers option, to have your flowers do something like this instead. And that way, if I brought it in, it didn't, it doesn't matter because that's just a leaf going over the top. But with the flowers that I currently have in there, I mean, it is an issue. So again, that's why it does what it does. For the future release, when you click Control, it'll bring in another version of flowers so that you can have multiple colors or whatever you want to do. When you hold Shift, it's going to do the same thing. However, Shift is going to bring the flowers to the front instead of to the back. And that, again, is mostly for the guys in Europe where you've got flower vases or flowers that are on your base itself. They're usually like canisters that come down into the base, something like this. And so it's going to bring those in so that they will be on top of the base, and then Control Shift will do the same thing where it brings your flowers in, but they'll be over the top of everything else. So that's coming in the next update as well. All right, any questions on flowers? Pretty simple. All right, so now we got ceramic portrait. This one, when you click on it, it brings in an oval. The special thing about this is that that oval has been preset to be a what's called a power clip frame. And so because of that, if I were to bring in a picture, I'm sure I've got some sort of picture on here. Let's just grab something. So I'm just going to grab this. Okay. If I bring in a picture, I can just drag and drop over the top of the frame, and it puts it inside that frame automatically for me, and then gives me options to fill it or, you know, fit it or whatever the case may be, because that is a power clip frame to begin with. And so that's what makes it special. You can always go and create your own power clip frames. Just draw an object, right click on it, say frame type, and create empty power clip frame. So you can always create your own if you want to, but this is just a quick button to bring one in. The other thing that it has is it has a contour applied to it as well. The reason I do that is because whenever I inset, we would usually inset our ceramics. So we would blast a line larger than the ceramics and then put them in so that they're flush with the stone. And so I give myself a border there for sandblasting a V line first, and then sandblasting the rest of it out to make it deeper. That's why I contour it. If you don't want it contoured, if you don't like the shape, if you don't like any of that, you would do the same thing for editing any of the other ones. You just go to Open, go to that import folder in Memorial Designer, and you can open up the existing one and change whatever you want as far as that goes. So you are free to change these, oops, wrong button. You're free to change these items up as much as you want. You would just open up the powerclip.cdr, and that's what you would edit. You'll notice now I've got 4 of those for the upcoming release, and that's so that we can have different options. Square, round, heart, whatever. We'll make it so that we've got those different options too. But if I open this up, you'll see we've got the regular shape, and then if I click on this, that's the contour. So if you don't want to contour, you can check that out.
Yeah,
Should be. Yeah, cool.
Right?
So question on that. So when you showed me this one time and I just cannot find it. So let's say that I'm working on something and I make power clip inside, and then I decide, oh, I don't want a power clip inside that. It leaves an X inside there.
Yes.
How do I get rid of that?
So by
You showed me it was really simple, but I
yeah, by default, it's going to leave an X. If we're back in here and I come, so another thing to notice too is because I've already applied, I've already thrown an image into this, it's not giving me the power clip options right here. The reason it's not giving me the power clip options is because it's a group. So if I wanted to get to the power clip options, I'd have to dig into the group holding Control and clicking, then they'll pop up, or I need to ungroup it. So either way, usually I just Control click just because it's faster, but that gives us the option of going into here. And then, so if you extract those contents, if you get rid of them and pull them out, okay, you don't see the X on this one because it's black and the X is black. If we made that shape white, you would see that X.
right.
So there are 2 different ways of going about that. You can right click on it and say frame type and just say remove frame, and that will tell it to not be a power clip anymore. Okay. And will not have those X's. Or if you go to tools, options, and I think it's under, oh, I don't know, probably CorelDRAW. There is a power clip option here. I have it set to only show those X's on screen only. So if I cut that, it's not going to cut the X's. You can also tell it not to show lines. If you just uncheck that, then it's not going to show them. So
okay, so you have it unchecked, show lines.
I have it checked to.
Okay.
I just unchecked it, and that's why they don't show anymore. But normally I have it set to show, but I have it to set to show on screen only.
Okay,
That
great. I like that.
That way I'll see that it's a power clip still. I know that it's a power clip still, but when I go to cut my file, it's not going to cut.
That's a great setting. Now, is that on that option for that setting? Is that in 2021 or is that back?
It's generations back. So
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on ceramic and how that works? So by default, I had it set up to just bring in a 9 by 12 centimeter oval, because that's the one that I use most often when I sold ceramics. You'll see up here it's actually in inches because our units are set for inches, but it is 9 by 12 centimeters. Again, if I control click and select just this inside piece, I can set this to whatever I want. So I could go 5 by 7 and make it bigger, and it's going to make the contour grow with it. So you can change it anyway. That way you can rotate it if your picture is going to be horizontal. You can do all sorts of stuff with it that way that you want to. But one of the nice things that I do like about the way that these function up here is that you can do 11, or let's say 17 cm tab 11 cm, and it's going to do the centimeters for you, but convert it to inches automatically. So if you, depending on your manufacturer, whether they're using metric or imperial units, you can decide, how you want to type that in pretty quickly. So that's ceramic portrait. The next button over is plot page. I'm just going to open up my kind of go-to design here, which is one I always use to check, and that's 347 in the classic collection. Maybe it's 347 in the classic collection. Give me just a second here. I think what I did was I saved over my 347 last time without realizing it. That's okay. We'll just still use it like this. Okay. So in this design, and Tammy, I'm going to change this again for you. I should really just do this and save it, right? Change all my fonts. Here we go. Okay. So if we had a design like this, and we had it all ready, it's approved and ready to sandblast, and it's in color, and we've got a background, and we've got all this other stuff in our design that we don't need to produce. What I use the plot page for is I'll grab whatever I want to produce as far as sandblasting goes, and then I'll hit the plot page button. What plot page does is it creates a second page down at the bottom called plot. The original is still here, and it's still in color, and it hasn't been touched. It just created a copy of my selection, threw it to the plot page, and then it took all the fills out of it. So that way I can see my overlaps and that sort of stuff. And, I can go and grab those, combine them, weld them, and do all my welding and stuff that I need to do in order to get it prepped for cutting. If I needed to resize this, I could, 36¼ by 14½, whatever the case may be. If I like to trim up the edges, and not cut the whole shape of the stone, different people do it different ways, but you can do all sorts of, different things like this. And that way you don't have everything that you want, or you've got everything, but you don't, anyway, you just have what you want. So different options, or the whole point of the plot page is to get your file ready for cut without messing with your original. Because if you keep things in pieces, it's much easier to move around. It's much easier to, let's say, grab all the panels and change panels and that sort of stuff. If it's all in pieces. If it's all combined and welded, that's a lot harder to do. And so I like to keep both of them separate, but I also like to keep them in the same file so that if I ever needed to go back to Howard's design, I could see the way that it was designed. I could see the way that it was cut. You know, let's say I had done an epitaph or something, and the epitaph was in a font that was, you know, maybe too small to blast. And so what I ended up doing was using my bold button to make that a little bit bigger so that it would blast, right? On this, it's fine. I'm just getting it ready to cut, so I can make it bold and not worry about whether it's editable or not, because I'm just cutting it. I don't need it to be editable anymore. But if I had the editable text on the original, then I could always go back and edit it if I needed to for future stones or whatever the case may be. But that's what the plot page is for, is that it's meant to let you prep things for cutting without messing with the original. One of the things that it currently does is if I have my page border showing, when I create my plot page, it is currently set to resize the page to fit whatever I had selected. And the reason that it's doing that is on the APD flatbed cutters, the flatbed cutters will start cutting in the lower left-hand corner of your page. And so I have it set to automatically make the page the size of the object. That way, when you send out your cut file, it's going to automatically start down there at the bottom. If you don't want it to do that, or you don't understand that that's what it's doing, that is what it's doing. So if you notice your page size changing, that's why it's changing, is because of that. But if you had it hidden, you really wouldn't notice anyway, other than being able to just see the page up here. In the future, we are working on the plot page Docker. The reason for that is there are times when you want, just like when we did the bevel stuff before, you know, if you had this design done up like this, and we decided to bevel all of this. I don't know how this is going to look because it's overlapping, but you know, if we had these duplicated pieces, we can grab those, and in the plot page Docker, we can basically tag that for deletion, so that when you create your plot page, it's going to automatically delete those duplicates for you. Or sometimes you've got a design that's got, you know, an extra frosted area, maybe just because the way that the design is done, you've got some frost in there, and you really need to delete that, otherwise you'll get double cuts. There's various reasons why you have multiple objects that overlap each other. But the idea is that the plot page Docker will help you to get rid of all of those, and then also give you borders and all sorts of stuff. It's going to be quite a big project, so that's why it's not done. But if you're in one of the most recent workspaces and versions, we forgot to pull it out, and so it's actually just up there under Memorial Designer. I wouldn't suggest using it, but I'm pointing it out to you to know that that's coming in the future, but also don't use it because it is broken. So plot page, that's what it's for and what it does. Any questions on plot page? No?
I do, real quick. So, okay, so you've got the two different plot pages. So in a situation that, let's say I had the Howard design and I made it with panels and I made it without.
Okay.
Would it be your mentality to save the Howard design without panels as a different file name? Or would you save it as a different tab, and therefore could you have like page 1 be Howard with panels, page to be Howard without, and then could you also have 2 plot pages?
So what I do myself is if I was doing a version with panels and without, if I was designing it at the same time, usually when I'm designing things, I'm going to be designing it with the family. So I will have both versions, and I'll be working on both versions simultaneously. So I keep it in the same page because I want to be able to show the customer at the same time, you know, the difference between the two and be able to compare that way.
Right.
So I will often do this. However, that brings us to the next button over, which is the revision page. And that is if I was going back and forth with a customer via email or whatever the case may be, oftentimes I will grab what I want to keep and just hit the revision page, and it will make a new page for me, but give it today's date because that's the revision date. And I can, you know, then make any changes that I want to this one, take out panels, change text, whatever the case may be, change the color. And the idea behind this is that I can then have, you know, this, excuse me, I can have this version and I can have my original version, but, you know, not have them mess with each other. So that's basically, I keep everything that I'm working on at the same time in the same file, okay, or on the same page. I don't like to have multiple files for different things because organizationally, for me, it makes more sense to just have tabs for my different versions and different things.
So just for the sake of learning, could you open up a new document? And then just to understand that revisions a little bit more, maybe just make like a red square. Okay, so everybody, there's a red square on the main design. Now I'm going to pretend I'm a customer and I'm going to say, Cameron, I really like that red square. I wish it was a red oval. So he's going to make a revision of that now.
Yeah, if I were going back and forth via email or something, that's
Yep.
what I use this.
So then he makes that new revision and he changes that to an oval. That works. And yeah, make it green just for the sake of, yeah. All right, so now we have a red rectangle that the customer wanted originally, and then, and notice how he moved it over a little bit too. There. So now he can go back and forth and show the difference, especially if he's working with a family, right? Go down to the first tab. There you go. Yeah. And if they wanted, of course, if they wanted another revision where they wanted it to be something else, then you would have those. Now, is it possible to show all of them?
So yes, and again, if I was doing this with a customer live, I normally would not do different pages. Okay, I'm
Okay,
only
yeah.
just going to do it all on the same page.
Right.
That way I can show the differences side by side, and it's easier that way. I feel like if I wanted to see these pages side by side in 2021, there is now a new multi-page view. I don't use this. I don't use pages, and so
Okay.
you know, it again. I haven't played with this enough to even test it.
That's fine. Me neither. I don't know anything about it yet, other than I know it's there.
Yeah.
I haven't touched it.
Yeah, I mean, it's there.
Okay,
I can
fair
see,
enough.
you know, multi-page view, and I can see both of them. But I like to hide my borders. I like to not have those
Yeah,
messing with
I
me.
agree. Thank you.
Yep. So that's what the plot page and the revision page are for. You'll notice down here, both of these pages are saved with the name of 4/6/2021. That's because that's today's date. When you create a new document, normally CorelDRAW will name it page 1. Okay, I tell it to rename that to today's date. The reason I do that is because I want to know when I created that file, and if I have revisions later on, I want them to be labeled by date. So that's what happens when you create a new document, is the Memorial Designer will change the name page 1 to today's date. And then if it would, so if this was done, let's just say a month ago, and it was actually March 6th, okay, then when you go and create your revision page, it will do today's date. So then you've got both, and you know which date they were created on and that sort of stuff. That's what the dates are for down there. You can always rename them. A lot of times, so what happens when you do a plot page is it creates the plot page after your existing pages. When you do a revision page, it creates them before any existing pages. And the reason for that is because that's the one that's going to pop up when you open your document. So I want it to open up the most recent revision. And it's also going to be the one that shows up in a thumbnail. So when you save the file, that's the one that's going to show up. And so that's why I have it as page 1, as opposed to page, the plot page where I want that after everything else. So it doesn't do that to that page. You can always rename them as well. So if you have this designed and done and approved, and you can rename that to approved or something if you really wanted to keep track of things like that, just as an option. Okay, any questions on anything? Nope. All right, so we will keep going to the next button, which is objects to layers. In order to demonstrate that, let's go ahead and start a new drawing, and I'm going to import in some artwork. Typically, the reason that I use this button, for the most part, is if I'm trying to send out a laser etching or something of the sort. The way that CorelDRAW does their objects, okay, is that objects themselves can be stacked, just like layers can, they can be stacked. And so to me, it's overkill to have multiple layers because objects, multiple layers here, because objects really act as layers. And so I don't have a lot of reason for creating layers. But other programs like even PhotoPaint or Photoshop don't see objects as layers. So when you export out this file, if you want it to be a layered object, in order for that to happen, you have to tell these objects to be their own layers or put them on their own layers. And so if I wanted to be able to edit this layered the way that it is here, by being able to move these things around and pull them in and out, in order to do that, I would have to have each of these on their own layer. So that's what objects to layers does, is when you select multiple objects, I'm just actually going to do all of these, then I will hit objects to layers button, and it's going to create a new layer for every one of those objects. So now when I go up to file and I say export, and I choose a file type that will allow me to do the layers, and most often people are using Photoshop or PhotoPaint for doing this kind of work anyway. So I will click on that file type and hit export. And when it pops up, it's going to pop up an option that says maintain layers. So by maintaining the layers, it lets those be individual layers inside the program that I'm going to. Without those on individual layers, this maintain layers doesn't do anything. It would only maintain the layer one. Okay, so that's what objects to layers is for, is if I'm trying to send my stuff out to Photoshop or PhotoPaint or whatever the case may be and keep my layers maintained, I need them on multiple layers. The secondary thing that I use it for is when I have artwork that's coming in from other programs, a lot of times it'll come in with layers that I don't want because I like to usually work on a single layer. So the alternative, you can see I've got all these other layers now, is if I hold Control and click on this, it ends up merging all of those back to layer one, and now they're no longer on their own layer. So it's got both of those options to create layers based on objects or to merge layers all back to a layer one. Any questions on that? All right, so that's what that does. Dxf Fix. What that is doing is a lot of times I'll get DXF files from other people or other software, and it will, the files when they come in will usually be broken up into little pieces. So I'm just going to open up this CAD file. And if I look at this CAD file, each one of these lines is its own little piece, or each of these curves is its own little piece. If I select everything, you can see there's 399 different pieces, and it's across multiple layers. So if I come up here and look, I've got in a layer 11, a layer 0, a layer 13, a layer 12. Because the CAD program itself would put these different elements on different layers depending on what it was. And so there are multiple layers in this particular file, right? So what I could do is I could, in this particular design, we've got little overlapping things here which might not close up the way that we want them to. Normally, I would, if I was doing this myself, I would come in and virtual segment delete these so that when it does close, it's going to close correctly. But I'll do it both ways just so that you can see how it works. We'll grab a couple of those and I'll leave these ones the way that they are. So what Dxf Fix does is it does a number of steps all in one click. So when you click on it, the first thing that it does is it merges everything to one layer, so we don't have the multiple layers anymore. Okay. The next thing that it does is it will go and it tries to close, auto close anywhere that there are gaps. And so if we look at this, now instead of each of those things being an individual line, it's all closed up. Not only is it closed up, but then all of the inside pieces it fills in with the frosted fill, and then it gives you a very, very outline of black outline. It's not meant to do full designs yet. Okay, so that's why it didn't quite work the way that I would hope it would work, is because it's not meant to do a full layout. It's really meant for individual pieces. But you'll also see down here, it didn't close those in the way that we would maybe want them to be closed in, because it's trying to close up gaps to the nearest, place that it can. And so it's going to often, unless you've got it drawn the right way, it's going to often mess things up and do things kind of crazy, right? So I would always, before running Dxf Fix, I would go ahead and fix any crazy stuff first and then run Dxf Fix after that, because otherwise you can see how it kind of turns into a mess here that I'd have to come in and fix all this stuff. Okay, that's what Dxf Fix does, is it merges layers, it joins curves, and it joins curves on 3 different gap tolerances. So it starts with a small one and then goes to a medium size and then a larger gap tolerance. It does only go to about an inch gap tolerance, I believe, is what we have it maxed out as. And then it runs fill grayscale, which we talked about earlier, in order to fill the things in correctly. So a bunch of different stuff going on there with the Dxf Fix, but that's what that does and what it's for. Any questions on that one? All right.
I love that tool.
The next one over is remove duplicates. Remove duplicates, again, is mainly meant for when you're bringing in artwork that perhaps has duplicated pieces, has things in it that are overlapping, or if you, I guess yourself hit the plus sign to make another piece, so they're exact duplicates. It will help with that as well. The downside to the way that remove duplicates currently works is that we had it set to break up everything into individual. So basically it would take and grab every node, and then it would go like this and break apart. And then it would break all those up into individual pieces, so that it can then go and see if there are any overlapping just segments instead of whole pieces. But the problem that we ran into is by doing that, it also breaks up text. And then after it breaks it up, it tries to recombine everything, so that you're not cutting tiny little chunks, and sometimes messes up that way as well. So we're actually right now changing the way that remove duplicates works to not do the breaking up sort of thing. And instead, what it will do is it's going to just warn you if there are still overlapping things, and it's going to turn anything that's overlapping blue. So if I click on this and remove duplicates now, it's going to turn anything blue that's touching, or it's going to just give it a blue outline if it's touching something else. And so you can see that it gave this a blue outline and it gave this a blue outline because it's touching that. Anyway, that's what remove duplicates does, is deletes things that are, laid right on top of each other exactly. If it's slightly off, so if we had a piece like this, okay, and then we had a piece like this, those aren't really duplicates of each other. So remove duplicates is not going to delete those, okay, because they're not duplicated. But if I took this and made a whole bunch of copies on accident, and now I've got 14 of them, then I use remove duplicates, it should leave me with just one instead of 14. Okay, that's what that is for. I have, so there are other programs that people use that do remove duplicates. Usually their method was to remove duplicates before they cut stuff, just to make sure that things weren't duplicated. And so I've found people using this on a plot page, for instance, after you've done all your design work and everything's good to go. Let me see if I can go back to, let's just go back to this one. So, if we had this and, actually, no, I'll go back to this one. There you go. I'll just reopen it. If we had this design, for instance, and went to work on it. All right. There's no reason for me really to use remove duplicates on this, because I designed it to begin with, knowing that there weren't any duplicates. But this particular one, you'll actually see, because the way that I did this, I duplicated it on purpose. So there are 4 objects now. So the idea is to be able to remove those duplicates so that you don't have anything. And if there's still stuff touching like this, it's going to turn it blue, because what happened is there's something in here that, and it's just very small, you see right here. The reason this kind of stuff happens is because it was breaking everything up into individual tiny chunks. When it went to rejoin, it joined these together, and they ended up joining out here, as opposed to just joining the curve with this existing teeny tiny one. And so again, that's another issue that we've run into with the way that it currently works. And so that's why we're changing the way that it currently works, so that it doesn't do that kind of stuff. So anyway, use that with discretion. Use it for what it is used for. But if you find that it's making things worse, definitely stay away from that. The next tool over, find open shapes. This one we built a long time ago. The reason we built it is because it was hard to know where a design was closed, and we didn't have an easy way of closing the design up. Join curves didn't exist back then, and so it was really hard to know, where to join things together. And so what we did was we created the find open shape, so that if there was an open shape, and I'm just going to delete a couple pieces in here of this design so that you can see the way that this works. And I'm going to break this apart there so that it's open. And now if I run find open shapes, what it does is anything that's open, it's going to outline in a red outline. And then where it's open is going to change your endings to these crosshairs so that you can more easily see where you need to fix that design. And that's the way that find open shapes works, is changing your outline to red and then giving you the crosshairs so that you can see where you need to go in and fix that. Because then what we would do is we'd say, okay, so this is what we need to fix, and then we can join that together. And once it's joined together, then it's not going to be broken up anymore and that sort of stuff. So then it would close in and we'd be able to see it just the way that we want it to be done. But you can see that it gives us a visual clue or an indicator as to where things need to be fixed. I don't use it very often anymore because join curves will automatically go and find those and close them in for me, so I don't really worry about it too much. But if there's a stickler or something that I can't quite find where it's closed, then I will still use find open shapes just to be able to see where things are closed or not closed, where they're open. You need to have closed shapes in order for things to fill correctly, and so that's a good way of finding where your shapes are opened up in order to get them to close in correctly. Any questions on that one? All right. Next one over is pricing. Excuse me. We do a lot of custom artwork for other companies, and so oftentimes they want to get a price quote. So I just made that button so that I wouldn't have to quote them prices every time if they wanted something custom. If they had a design like this and I had names and dates and everything else and wanted to put something up in this corner, you could just make a box as to how much room you have and then run the pricing, and it would tell you how much it's going to cost to have us custom draw something in there. Just so you know, our pricing is increasing to $40 a square foot instead of 35. So I need to update the code to show that. But that gives basically a square foot price for what it would cost for us to do custom sandblast. If you hold Control and click, it gives you the cost for laser etching, which is currently $85 a square foot. This code is set for $75 a square foot. But I also sometimes use it, if I wanted to know how big to price the laser etching, I can just grab the stone shape and hold this and click on that button, and it'll tell me how many square feet it is so that I could quote that out to the customer as well. If I were, you on your end and quoting it to the family, that way I'd know how many square feet that is. So that's what that button does. The About Memorial Designer button is really easy. Just click on that and it tells you what version you're running. Every version currently expires on February 1st of a certain date. So that tells you when you're going to expire before you need to get an updated version and what versions it's meant for and when it was created. Normally I'll just ask you to click on that so that I know what version you're running. 1.375.6 is the latest released version. If you're not running that one, if you're running 1.375, and there's no dot anything after it, I would suggest that you get the latest because there were problems in 3.7.5. So either .1 or .6 are ones that you want to be running currently.
Hey, Cameron, where would we, where do I get that latest update at?
If you do, are you on your computer that's got Memorial Designer on it?
Yeah.
If you click on yours, what version are you running?
1.375.1.
Okay, so that version is actually the latest. The difference between that one and the 0.6 is simply a PDF export change. If you're using the PDF button, the only difference is that it's resizing the page before it does the export so that PDFs will show up correctly. So if that's something you need, let me know and I'll give you the .6. But if not, the 0.1 is what you're most, I mean, that's current anyway.
Gotcha.
Except for, and I think you had asked earlier, you said that some things looked different, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, right there, the to your standard panels to the inside.
Yeah,
that my version doesn't have that. I don't know if that's the experimental stuff on your end.
pretty much. Except that I have released some of this stuff. I made if you're on my Facebook group, that's where I posted it, so that people can test it out, make sure that it's working.
Gotcha.
I'm more than happy to send that to you or get you on the Facebook group as well so that you can see this. And yeah, so the panels and spacing is it's its own installer as far as that change went. And so I didn't update
Okay.
the version number yet. Once we do our full update, that's going to have the shape builder and all these other changes, then it will update to a new version.
Okay.
But yeah, this stuff I can definitely share with you, and you can test it out and see what you think about that sort of stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It'd make it nicer. It's a couple less steps, but I'm by no means slow at it. So
Yeah. No, it's definitely nicer. So I'll email you the how to get to those, and
cool.
you can install
Thank
it. Excuse me. The next one over, 3D Simulate. This is not very robust, but all it does is it takes your objects and does what's called an extrusion, so that it kind of goes out behind, the existing piece. Again, it's not doing anything crazy. It's not moving your stone up. It's not moving the stone behind this. It's not doing any sort of, fun things like transparencies or anything like that. It doesn't let you choose whether you want this to be frosted. It doesn't do, I'm talking about everything it doesn't do, because those are all things I would love for it to do. But right now, all it does is it takes your existing objects that you have selected and extrudes them behind to give it a top illusion that, it's got some sort of depth to it. It is something that will add to as far as being able to do other things, but that's what it does. Very simply, just takes your pieces and adds a top extrusion to it. The AB button next to this is actually a standard Corel Draw button, but I use it enough now that I placed it on the Memorial Designer toolbar, because it's not really available anywhere else other than if we had typed in some text. And the reason I use this most often is because I started selling the Monument Lettering Center fonts. And the way that the Monument Lettering Center fonts work is the lowercase version, unless there is a specific lowercase. So there are fonts like Formal Script that have a lowercase version, right? But if there isn't a specific lowercase, the lowercase is just a smaller version of the uppercase. And so sometimes when you're typing things in, you'll forget to hold shift, or you'll forget to use cap locks, or whatever it is that you like to do for capitalization, and everything will end up, if I didn't capitalize this at all, then here's my text. It looks just like I'm expecting it to look, but the size, instead of being 1 inches, is only 0.854. The reason for that is it's the lowercase version. So if I wanted to switch to the uppercase version, I just toggle, and it will toggle then to the uppercase. And this is just toggling between the upper and lower and all caps. Okay, so that's what that does. It's just a quick toggle button. One thing that I've noticed in using this is that if I were to type this all up, let's try this. This way, and if I do it this way, if we look at the difference between the two of these, this one I typed up with holding shift. So all of these are actually all capital letters, okay? And this one I typed up in lowercase, and then I hit the toggle button to turn it into uppercase. And it might be hard to see, but if I align these exactly and pull out some guidelines here, what you'll notice is the kerning is different. Okay, so where these kern is different. And that seems to be that CorelDRAW is not taking kerning into consideration when using the toggle button. So that's some, or it's applying the kerning maybe from the lowercase. I'm not sure what it's doing. I need to research that a little bit more to see what it's doing exactly. But it's definitely not the same as if I had typed it all in all caps. So just something to pay attention to, that they might not be exactly the same if you're using one method over the other. Any questions on that? All capitals?
No questions on it, but I've noticed I've transferred over some fonts from Gerber using some font software.
Yep.
And I've noticed that when it's doing the kerning, it will actually do it differently between uppercase and lowercase, and I've had to go through and make the adjustments manually to get them both to be the same. So that way I can type either uppercase or lowercase and not have that problem.
Yeah, when it comes to kerning pairs, upper and lower are separate pairs. So
Right.
Yep, when you build your font, you have to set the pairs for both.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, super fun. Yeah. So that's another reason that I sell the Monument Lettering Center fonts is because he's done a really good job of kerning. I don't edit the way that he's got stuff kerned myself. I like the way that he's got it done, and it's great, and I don't touch it. But he's also got it done, you know, for everything. Whereas, like you said, if you're doing it manually, and that's the hardest part of building a good font, is getting all those kerning pairs to look nice and set the right way. So yeah, I'm more than willing to, you know, spend the $59 on a font that's been professionally kerned, because it takes hours, literally.
One particular one we had, which was a punched condensed font, which was based off the old Space Right letters. They're not scalable between a few of the different sizes. The serifs on them are different. So I had to build one for each size, and then go that way.
Yep. That's why I just you know, default to my MLC fonts, where he's already built those for me.
Nice.
Yeah, it's tough to look out the window and watch people enjoying the day while you're in there kerning.
Yeah, right.
right.
Yeah.
We all feel the pain.
So there's a plug for the Monument Lettering Center fonts. I mean, he's just done a great job. Not only that, but if we compare just as a comparison, if we compare his fonts, let's just go with this here. And so his fonts also have accents and alternative glyphs and that sort of stuff, which I don't remember the alt codes for some of these, but let's just do this one here. Tyler was asking me about this. I think that was you, right, Tyler? You were asking about why it is that this drops down like that at certain zoom levels.
Yeah, that was me.
I was hoping that they would fix this in 2021, but it doesn't look like they did. So I'm going to try again. I'll report this again, but that's, I mean, it's whether or not this is outlined determines how that gets whether it's Windows or whether it's CorelDRAW that actually generates what that glyph looks like. And so there are some fonts where this messes things up. Anyway, going back to his fonts, you know, he's got outlines and fonts that have characters and all that sort of stuff. And so there's even more kerning involved when you have all those other letters, all the other letter sets. And so it definitely gets more and more complicated the more letters and, you know, whatever else you have in there. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of off topic, but that is one reason I use the MLC fonts for sure. Okay, next one over is text spacing for width. I had a number of customers that asked to do something like this. I always say never for my death date, but this time I'm gonna have to give me one. So I'll just do this. They wanted the ability to make these the same width as each other, which you can do if you come in here and, you know, force justify or full justify or whatever the case may be. But if you break these up into individual lines, then that doesn't work anymore because it's not able to justify those three lines together. And I can't remember if it works if you've got multiple text sizes. I think it does, but let's try. Yeah, it does that way. But anyway, they wanted the ability to set exactly how wide this line of text is. And right now, full justify or force justify, so force is going to work and it's going to justify it to the size of your largest line of text, right? So if my if my name were longer, it's going to pull it out all the way to justify with that. And that's not necessarily what they wanted. And so they were doing something more like this with multiple lines, having these two lines combined together, but separate from the other two, or separate from that one so that these are together. Anyway, it got a little complicated with trying to get these the same exact length and to choose how long they are, because you can't just type in 12 inches because it's going to stretch it out. So that's where text spacing for width comes in, is that you can take these, I'll just grab these ones. You can take these lines of text and choose 12 inches as my target width and hit apply, and it's going to make it so that they're 12 inches. It's giving it just word spacing right now because I don't have a percentage of what I want for character spacing. If I changed it to character spacing and applied it, let's see what happens here. 15. Let's see. It's not quite working the way it's supposed to. I'm gonna have to look at that. I don't know if that's a 2021 thing or if that's just a problem with the way that this is working. Oh, I bet it's because we had already set existing changes to begin with. So I'm gonna go back to the way that it was originally, back to here. And then I'll try this again. So let's try 25%. Yeah, still not working. All right, I'll have to play with that, see what's going on there. But that's what text spacing for width is meant to do is space things so that you can set a specific space, a specific size, and you can match things. So if we had broken these all apart, and this is the line that we want, we can say get width from selection, and it's going to pull that width in for that one. And then we can say apply to this one to get it to be the same size. But again, that's not working. So I'm gonna have to see if that's a 2021 bug or not. Let me open up 2020 just to see. Tyler, do you guys use this text spacing for width?
Yeah, we use it a good bit.
Are you running 2020 or 2021?
I'm on the subscription plan, but I haven't switched over to 21 yet.
Okay. I'm gonna try it here really quick in 2020 just to see what happens. I might just be doing something wrong. Edit, paste, special. Okay, so we got this, which is that big. We're going to text spacing for width. I'm gonna say 20 inches. Huh, interesting. I'll have to play with that and see what's going on with it. Because that's not the way that it's supposed to work. I don't know what we did there. That is, though, what text spacing for width is supposed to do, is set your text to a specific width. And now it's 6 inches. If I want it to go to 12 inches, it's 12 inches there. If I 1979, it's 12 inches there. I don't know what I'm doing. Your guess is as good as mine, but I'll play with that some more and see what's going on. Any questions on that one? Obviously, I mean, it's kind of broken, so I'll have to see what it's doing. But all right, so that leaves us with the final button on the MD toolbar, which is the page border. Again, I turn page borders off because I don't like them in my way. And they can actually do some things in older versions of CorelDRAW that I don't really want them to do, which means that if you have the page border showing in older versions and you have stuff that's off the page border, if you switch pages, so if I go to this page, page 2, in older versions, what it would do is it would actually move that anything that's not on the completely inside the page border would get moved to the desktop layer. So I'm going to uncheck, I think it's this one here. I'm going to uncheck that. And I think if I change pages now, then, yep, see, it moved everything down here to the desktop layer of the master page, which can mess things up. They have fixed that in recent versions. I think they started in 2019, I think is when they changed that, so that by default, it doesn't do that anymore. But in past versions, that's what it would do. And so that's one reason that I turn off the page border. Another reason is I just don't like a box being around everything. I'm always larger than the page border when I'm designing, and so I don't really like to see it. But I do now use the page border if I'm, cutting to a flatbed cutter, for instance, or whatever the case may be. So sometimes I want to set my page to a certain width and rearrange things to fit inside that, the way that I want it to. And so I've put this, even though it's a standard CorelDRAW tool, I put it on the MD toolbar so that we can get to it faster. That's what that does. It shows and hides your page border. And that is everything then on the MD toolbar. Any questions on any of that stuff?
We just need a button that drops confetti, virtual confetti. So
Yeah.
when you finish the last item on a section, we can,
Yep, we can celebrate. All right, well, that gets us to the end of that. And so next time, I think what we'll do is talk about the toolbox itself. If you want to, for next week, have questions or need to see anything specific, let me know and we'll cover that. But thanks for being here, everybody. And we will see you next week. And Aaron, I'll be sure I email that stuff to you.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay. All
Have a
right.
great rest of your week, everyone.
All right, you too.
See you on Friday.
See you later.